Good evening. It's time for our regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for Monday, August the 10th at 2026, 5:30 p.m. here. We're going to open the meeting this evening first with a public hearing. We have a public hearing on Ordinance 1694, an ordinance to rezone property at 707 East Lincoln Street, Coffee County, from general commercial C2 to high-density residential R3. Is there anyone here to speak to this rezoning this evening?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Come ahead.
Hello.
If you don't mind, give us your name and address and tell us. Go ahead
My
and
name
give us
is
your
Barbara.
comment.
Barbara Bollinger. I'm here for Vernon Cole.
Okay.
You want his address?
Sure.
He's at 401 Lamont Street.
Okay. But do you have any? But do you have any comments about this? It's just a public hearing.
I know that
You're just representing the property
Yeah, I just
owner.
am representing him. I know that it was brought to attention at the last meeting, and it was voted to pass to have it rezoned. We're just here to ensure that that goes forward.
All right. So if no one else has any other comments, unless you have anything else to say, all right, then we'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to our regular meeting. If you would, let's stand. Well, Pastor Jimmy Kelly is going to give us an invocation.
Let's all pray. Great God of heaven, we thank you for this day that you have given to us, another opportunity to serve you and to follow you. We thank you for your mercy and your grace, for Calvary and salvation in the name of Jesus. We thank you for the soldiers that defend our great country. We thank you for the first responders that serve our community. I pray your blessings over this meeting tonight. God, I pray, Lord, let us have a better understanding for one another, a greater appreciation for one another. Let your Spirit guide us in all conversations, discussions, and decisions. I pray your blessings to be upon the city of Tullahoma. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have roll call. We have 6 present and 1 absent. So we have 6. We have a quorum. That brings us to comments from citizens. On our sign-up sheet, we have one person signed up. Is it Daniel Bourne? Did I get close? Oh, Daniel Berry. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to learn to read that last name, aren't I? Mr. Berry.
I've answered to a lot worse. Good evening. My name is Daniel Berry, 132 Linda Lane here in Tullahoma. I'm here in support of Ordinance 1696. You strip away the noise, and it's a simple question. Do we want fair competition and physical safety in the girls and women's rec leagues this city runs? I do. Most of the people sitting at home watching do as well. This ordinance answers that question honestly. Let me clear up what it's not. It's not the city inventing its own rules or going out on a limb. Tennessee already defines sex in state code at 1-3-105C as a person's biological sex at birth, shown on the original birth certificate. Ordinance 1696 simply adopts that definition that our state already uses. We're lining up a state policy, not writing our own. And for anyone worried about the legal side, that question got answered 6 weeks ago. On June 30th, the United States Supreme Court ruled that standards, exactly like this one, do not violate Title IX and do not violate the Equal Protection Clause. 2 lower courts had blocked those state laws. The Supreme Court reversed them both. So the argument that this exposes the city to some federal lawsuit does not hold up anymore. That door is closed. Now look at how this ordinance actually works. Because it's reasonable. Co-ed and open leagues, they're untouched. Nobody's checking paperwork at sign up. Verification only happens if a specific eligibility question is formally raised. That's a narrow, common sense process, not a blanket testing of every kid who wants to play ball. I know there's concern about the parts that apply to outside leagues renting our fields, the rosters and the affidavits and the audits. Let me address those head on. The city isn't regulating private groups out in the world here. We're setting terms for who uses taxpayer-owned property. Every city already does this. If you rent a city field, you follow the city's conditions. Proof of insurance, facility rules, scheduling, cleanup. This ordinance adds one more. If you run a single-sex league on our fields, your roster follows the same standard the city itself follows. That's not new or unusual power. It's the most basic thing a property owner does. decide the terms of use for its own property. A group that doesn't want to meet that condition is free to play somewhere else. Nobody's rights are being regulated. A privilege is being conditioned, and the city has every right to set that condition. And if the board wants to fine-tune the mechanics on that piece, the audit turnaround, or the affidavit language, that's exactly what your study session is for tonight. This is a practical measure. It protects the integrity of single-sex competition. It protects the girls playing it, and it keeps our city aligned with the law of the state and the ruling of the highest court in the country. I'd ask the board to pass ordinance 1696 on first reading tonight. Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
Any other public comments at this time? Anyone else? When this is only time. So does any other public comments from citizens? All right. If not, we will close that. That takes us to approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion on the agenda? We have a motion. We have a second. With that, I would like to make a motion to remove items under new business 9, 10, and 11. These items were put on the agenda at the last moment on Tuesday night, Wednesday. It's in violation of our rules to put items on the agenda that have not been to study session. This has been clearly communicated recently. All three of these items involve issues that should have full review by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in a study session with advice of our staff who have not had time to fully review these, or our legal counsel who has not fully had time to review these. That's not to say I won't end up voting for one of these, but we've really got to start following our own rules. So I have a motion to amend the agenda that way. Do I have a second? So I have a second. Any other comments?
Yes, I have some comments. You're incorrect about what the rules are. This board passed a change to those rules that said any alderman could add an item to the agenda before the publication of the agenda on Wednesday.
Did you point?
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice.
I'm going to read from our current rules adopted by resolution number 1925 on the 8th of August in 2022. Board members seeking to have an item added to a regular meeting agenda may direct the city administrator in writing to place an item on study session for discussion only. Items must then be submitted to the city administrator no later than noon on Monday preceding the week of the board meeting. Neither of those events has occurred. Prior to adding any item discussed at study session to a regular meeting agenda, the proposed item must have a sponsor and co-sponsor from at least 2 board members. Filed in writing with the city administrator, items requiring research or written recommendation for staff may be placed on a future agenda as timely as is practical. That's our rules for putting items on the agenda.
That's not, that rule was changed.
So I have asked our city recorder that multiple times, and she has researched our records, and these are our current rules. And if you have some evidence to the contrary.
Yes, I do have evidence.
Let's hear it.
If you would check the minutes on January 23rd, 2023, agenda item 23-19 changes that rule. It was passed by unanimously by the board, and that new rule states, pretty much what I said before, but let me see here. A motion was made by Alderman Almacher and seconded by Alderman Glick to approve item 2023. On roll call, all members voted aye. That item, and there was quite a bit of discussion about it, was to allow an alderman to add an item to the agenda prior to it being published. And if you look at the body of the arguments online, I could tell you it is at 2 hours, 37 minutes, and 39 seconds is where it starts. And there's quite a bit of discussion. And that changed that rule as portion of the rules for the alderman.
Was that a motion to amend the rules?
It was to amend and replace that rule, that one rule of the rules. It was discussed that we needed to change all the rules, but the board never got around to doing it. But we did vote on changing that one rule. And the reason why we did it is obvious, because if aldermen are going to be representatives of the people, they should be able to add an item at any time to the agenda before it's published. That is the way that they could bring an item before the public and before the board to be discussed, and that's a fair representation. In the agendas we have now, there are several items on there brought up by staff, and it always has been this way. Several items brought in by staff, city administrator, planning and codes director, recreation director. Everybody has agenda items. Those don't
The
go.
attorneys.
Yeah, the attorneys. Those don't go to any kind of study session and have to have two aldermen to vote. So why would an alderman, the elected official, a member of this board that the meeting is had for, to put an agenda item on? So I don't need to argue that point anymore. It's already been decided. If you want to change that rule, you'll have to change it, and I don't know why this board would want to change it, because it just takes any kind of power they have to try to represent the constituents they have to represent.
So it's very standard practice for most legislative bodies to have rules for agenda items to be put on the agenda by board members. County Commission does it through committees. Most legislative bodies have a rule that not just any member, you can't walk into the Tennessee legislature, step up on the floor, stand up and make a motion without permission to get an item on the agenda.
Well, this
So there's
item
plenty
is
of
on the
reasons.
agenda, and it follows our rules that we accepted. So
So-
I don't care what anybody else does.
So that's what's been in dispute, because if,
It's not in dispute anymore.
yeah, let me see.
I guess my memory was better than your research.
And while you're looking at that, I have my
No,
button pushed.
wait, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I too sat on that board that voted on this motion, and I do remember that was changed. And I think both Alderman Glick and I both let this board know last time, the last meeting that we had, about that rule that had been changed. And also, I would like to just point out something that's painfully obvious. There was a motion added last minute to the agenda to repeal an ordinance for our 2045 comprehensive plan, added last minute without any notice, to change it from an ordinance to a resolution. And on that day, you welcomed that. But here's something that was put on the agenda the proper way, in the time frame that's allowable to get something on the agenda, and you're sitting here now asking to have it removed.
So to clarify, that night that was offered up, there's another rule that says we can add an item at the beginning of the agenda. We could add these now.
But why would you be against something that was done the proper way, but something
So-
that's so critical to our city,
So
that would be changing an
So we had a-
ordinance to a resolution, that you were all for that?
we had a vote that evening amongst the majority of the members of this board to place that item on the agenda. That question is not a question, when the question we have right now is not a question of whether we're placing an item on the agenda tonight. It's the fact that an item was placed on the agenda without following the past rule. So I'm trying to determine now whether that's accurate.
Why don't you pull up the meeting?
Well,
We can
and
get it up- you can pull it
I'd
up on
also
the
like to
screen
finish,
right here
because
and play it.
Yes, ma'am.
that actually was not even done the proper way. That, adding that last minute without any notice to the public or to all of us, that was added to repeal our 2045 plan as an ordinance and to make it into a resolution, which it was successful. To get that on here, but something that Alderman Glick has researched and put on here in the time frame allowable. We all have a due diligence to research these things in the time frame that we have, which is from Wednesday to Monday. And we all should become ready to discuss the items that are on the agenda. It's been that way since, I would probably guess, the beginning of time.
All right, I'm going to read this that Mr. Glick has handed me. The item under consideration was agenda item number 23-19, to allow aldermen to add an item to the agenda prior to it being published. A motion was made by Alderman Almacher and was seconded by Alderman Glick to approve agenda item number 23-19. Do we have a copy of the agenda item itself?
It was added at the beginning of that meeting.
But do we have a copy of it? It's irrelevant for tonight, because I've made the motion to remove it regardless on that basis, and we're going to vote on that. And I'm probably going to lose this vote. But I just want to make the point that it does matter that we follow proper procedure, because what we're having here
Well, it
is,
does matter. That's all I'm asking you to do is follow the procedure and leave it on the agenda. The rules state that. Doesn't matter to me that you didn't know the rule. Ignorance of the rule is no excuse. It stays on the agenda because it follows the rules of this board.
so I'm
You
also,
can adjourn this meeting and take whatever time you need to research it if you need to. But that is the rule. It says so in the meeting. You could watch the meeting. You could bring it up on the screen here and everybody could watch it together. But that's what it says, and that's what the discussion was, and that's what we passed.
okay, so now I'm going to respond. It's also a rule that we can add or remove items from the agenda. This item has not been reviewed in the study session. We've had no consultation on this item, any of these three items. And on the basis of that, I've made a motion to remove it. I don't have any other comments if anybody else does. Let's vote.
Okay, if you vote,
If you vote yes, it'll be removed from the
it's
agenda.
removing it. You vote no, and it stays.
Yeah. The motion failed. Okay. So now, any other adjustments to the agenda? All right, let's vote on the agenda. Motion carries 7-0. Our next item is reports from the aldermen. Start with Alderman Byrd.
Thank you very much. I was able to attend the city picnic, and that was an incredible event. Thank you to all who helped organize that and have it put together. I'd also like to say congratulations to the Tullahoma test pilots for their tournament win. The airport is continuing with study sessions to update SOPs and minimum standards. Also, a huge thank you to Justin and Wyatt from the airport. Their time and knowledge has been very valuable in helping make these changes. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to just remind everyone about something that I had announced last meeting, that on Sunday, August 30th at 11 a.m., my church at New Life Tullahoma will be hosting Friends Day. It'll be a really fun day of food, fellowship, and friends, and everyone is welcome. Whether you've been looking for a church home, haven't been to church in a while, or simply just curious, we'd love to have you join us. I truly believe that if you come to New Life, you'll leave better than you came. And if coming alone makes you nervous, please don't let that stop you. Reach out to me. If you need a ride, I would be glad to help. If you'd just like someone to sit with, I'd be honored to meet you there and be that friend. So I hope you will consider coming. And again, that's August 30 at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Alderman McGee.
Okay, I have just a few things to report tonight. I too attended very briefly the city picnic. I've also supported the THS football team. They've had 2 scrimmages. They lost the first one, but won the second one. I want to congratulate the Tullahoma test pilots for their win, and I also want to extend my condolences to the Cabral family in the loss of their grandson. And also, I've passed out something that we've been working on for about 6 months. JP, Jeff, and myself. About 6 months ago, Destiny and Devon Holmes and Ernest Irvin, they came and they presented their concerns about Jefferson Street Park. Since then, Jeff and JP has put in most of the work, but I would like to say that Destiny and Devon and Ernest, they are pretty much the catalyst for this playground, the new playground equipment that we're hoping to put at Jefferson Street Park. I've passed out pictures of how it would look. This will be at no cost to the citizens. You can see the numbers here. There's specifications for the playground equipment. It will accommodate approximately 50 to 60 children at one time. It's designed for children ages 5 to 12. It has the different features, and I just want you all to take a look at that. And it's also part of, I had also been talking to JP and Jeff about a 5-year plan for CD stamps. I think it's very important that, it will add a quality. The additions that they've been talking about, that we've been talking about, will add quality of life to the citizens in that community. So I just wanted you all to take a look at this. And Jeff probably can add more in his report as JP is absent on tonight. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Mathis.
I would like to congratulate our 3 new aldermen, Mr. Dent, Ms. Bradford, and Mr. Berry. I think they'll all do a great job. Bobby, it's been a pleasure working with you. It's just one of those things that happens sometime. So you did a great job. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Glick.
Along those lines, I'd like to congratulate all the winning people of the election, the new aldermen, and also want to congratulate all the people who didn't win. It's deserves a congratulations just to put your name out there and go to all the work and go through the process to try to represent people this town. So I congratulate all the people who ran for election. And then one other item I'd like to bring up, it's been in the news quite a bit lately about the problems that a lot of people are having about the license plate readers on vehicles, about how it could be in violation of constitutional rights. And I know that I'm following up here on an item that we voted on a few years ago. And that was we passed a resolution to allow the city to put license plate readers into our town. But I argued for, and we added to that resolution, that the staff would bring back an ordinance that would govern the use of those cameras and would lay out all the rules, how that data that was collected is used, how long it was retained, and all those particulars. So that ordinance has never been brought forward by staff as oversight on my part that I didn't follow up and ask that it be brought back. But I'm asking now if we could go back and look at that and draw up an ordinance for, won't be a board I'm on, but for a future board to vote on, and let's try not to let this pass. I think it's very critical, especially with the reports I've been seeing lately. Actually, it was on national news, and it was part of it was coming from Knoxville, Tennessee. So it's a national issue that's brought close to home, and it just reminded me of that gap we have in our ordinance. So if we could look into that, that's all I have.
Thank you. For the mayor's report, I don't have a lot other than the comment also. Congratulations to all the winners here tonight, and thanks to everyone who ran for office, not just for the city alderman races, but all the countywide local races. It is a lot of effort to put your hat in the ring with a lot of uncertainty, and so thanks for everyone for stepping up for that. With that, report from the city administrator.
I'd also like to congratulate three new aldermen, Donna Bradford, Daniel Berry, and then Mike Dent. On the community events, I had the opportunity to attend the city summer picnic at Fraser McEwen Park. It's just a real good evening of just fellowship and community. We had Southern Moss that provided live music, and then we finished the evening by catching the Test Pilots game for their regular season game. Later on the following week, they ended up winning the first ever inaugural season of the Vol State League, and they actually won that at home. I want to give a special shout out to Josh Morris, who's been the general manager for the Test Pilots. He has done a wonderful job of managing the concessions, working with the police department for the security, and just being an overall good experience for the citizens of Tullahoma. On another event, 41A, or I'm sorry, Kiwanis of the Highland Rim has a big event coming up on September 19th. I'll probably speak about it a couple different times. It's called Dig Day on 41A. We're actually going to be partnering with them on it, where we send some of our fire trucks, police trucks. We've contacted the county as well. It's almost kind of like a touch-a-truck for kids that day. It's a free event. They're going to be giving away prizes. It's going to take place right behind Christopher Equipment. I had an opportunity to meet with John McCord, Max Christopher, Ernie Jones, and Joe Orr, who are heading up this event as a totally free event for the community that the city will be participating in it. They'll be shuttling people from the parking lot at Lowe's back over there to that, and there's probably going to be a couple surprises of some bigger stuff that may be there today. But Kiwanis gives back 100% back to Tullahoma through funding local youth initiatives, educational initiatives in a lot of various ways. Cernobia brought up the Jefferson Street Playground. When we had some of the citizens come in last year and speak on that, we began working on kind of what could fit down there, what could go down there. There's some drainage issues there. And actually last week we met, or JP met with, he's not here tonight, so I'm going to speak a little bit about that. JP met with Miracle Playground, who's actually, Kurt, you'll know about this, they're on Sourcewell, so it will not have to go to a bid. Cernobia has a drawing that I gave for all of you guys to take a look at. It adds several play features, a couple of swing sets as well. That also includes the mulch and the timber as far as, circling that in. There's a preliminary cost. This money is left over for contingency from the the Silver Street Park that was left in contingency. So this money is already there. We're not asking for new money. The money is already budgeted into another project that we'll be able to build this playground with. I definitely think there's a need there at Jefferson Street Park. Also for Parks and Recreation, fall basketball, adult basketball registration has opened, and I think it's open until sometime in September. So that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second. Let's vote. That motion carries 7-0. That brings us to our unfinished business. So our unfinished business, the first item is ordinance number 1690. An ordinance to amend Title I, Chapter 3 of the Tullahoma Municipal Code regarding the Office of City Administrator, the application of the city's personnel regulations, and the procedure for grievances concerning the city administrator for passage on the second and final reading. Do we have a motion and a second for that? We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I press the button.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a lot better. I like the additions that were made to it. I think that gives the city administrator adequate protection. My only suggestion is that I don't really think, I don't know if I mentioned this last time or not, but I don't really think we're going about this the right way. I think it's correct in the ordinance, and what we've already agreed to is to make the city administrator a regular employee of the city of Tullahoma that is under the personnel regulations of the city of Tullahoma. So in order to do so, I think this ordinance needs to say just that, and that's the way this ordinance starts out. And then the ordinance goes into all the rules of the grievance procedures and disciplinary actions and stuff like that. I think all that should be stripped out of the ordinance, and all that stuff put into the personnel regulations for several reasons. Number one is it would make it the same as if he is going to be an employee just like everybody else. That's the way every other employee is handled. There's not an ordinance that says how we need to take disciplinary action against a recreation director, or it's all in the personnel regulations. And I would say that the ordinance should make the city administrator a regular employee, and the rest of it points to the personnel regulations. So reason number one is that it makes it the same as every other employee. Reason number two is it makes it better for all the employees and the city administrator as well. The new city administrator, if Jeff leaves and someone new came on, it gives them one place to look. If they decide that they want to have a grievance or have a complaint against the city administrator, they would look in the personnel regulations. That's where they look to have, that's their guidebook. That's how they look to do everything. So they would look for that in the personnel regulations. I wouldn't want them to have to look in the personnel regulations, then go to the city code of ordinances to find it in the city code of ordinances how it is. And it should all just be in one place, all the regulations for all the employees, which this ordinance makes the city administrator a regular employee. So I would like to make an amendment to the motion to pass this ordinance, and my amendment is that we leave the part in the ordinance that codifies the city administrator being a regular employee, and then all the regulations about discipline and things like that be removed from the ordinance and placed in the personnel regulations.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, sorry. Verbally, do we have a second for that
I'll
motion?
second it.
Okay. So discussion. Who would like to speak first? Ms. Wilson.
I agree with Alderman Glick that it does seem just disjointed to me, and it seems like the proper place would be, where you would expect to look for a city employee, that it would all just be laid out right there in the employee handbook.
I'm sorry, Kurt, what was the second part to that?
Could you read it again?
I just hit it off the top of my head, but
Sorry,
it's
the part that codifies the city administrator being a regular employee.
and then remove all the stuff about the grievance procedures and all that, and move it to the personnel regulations.
Oh, wow, no.
And I might be out of turn and say, and also with it being in the personnel regulations, if that ever needed to be changed, you would change it in one place, and you wouldn't have two conflicting rules. You wouldn't have to change it in the personnel regulations and remember to go back to the code of ordinances and change it there. And then since it's an ordinance, it would have to go through 2 votes and everything else. I think the cleanest way to do it is refer to it in the code of ordinances that all aspects of the employment of the regular employee, are in the personnel regulations.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Well, I'll get to you in just a moment, Ms. Wilson. Anyone else? So I've got a couple of comments, but I'd like to hear what our city attorney has to say about this, because I think she has a few comments.
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you. First I would point out this was brought by Alderman Glick in the way that it is presented, and he's made substantial edits with me to this. But also, as I told Alderman Glick when he addressed this issue with me, this is going to be reflected in our personnel regulations. Right now, our staff is actively communicating with MTAS about changes to the personnel regulations. This isn't the only change that needs to be made to the personnel regulations, and my understanding is that we're going to present something to the board very soon, which will be reflective of exactly what this grievance procedure is in the personnel regulations as well. I agree it needs to be in the personnel regulations, but this isn't just a regular city employee. I know it was referenced several times. He's a normal city employee. He's not. He's our city administrator. And there's a section in our municipal code that governs the city administrator specifically. And so we do need to edit that in our code, which is what we're doing by doing this. Our regulations are separate from that, and that's what's handed to employees whenever they're hired with the city. So I agree, the grievance procedure needs to be in there, but there's a way to change our personnel regulations separate from changing our municipal code. This is what changes our code, and then our personnel regulations should reflect what we've put into our code, and we do intend to do that.
So a question for the city administrator. The personnel regulations that the employees get, is that a combination of personnel regulations and employee handbook, or are those two separate things?
Same thing.
It's the same thing. Currently, right now, though, it says the city administrator is excluded from the personnel regulations currently in our personnel policy.
Yeah. So one of the comments I was going to make when I read this, it says the board mayor and alderman has determined the city administrator shall be a full-time employee. That's just a statement of fact. That's not actually a part of the ordinance. And because when you come down, it says therefore the municipal code is hereby amended by adding the following new section. Now the city administrator report directly to the board mayor and alderman. They've always reported directly to the board mayor and alderman. So, but I just, there's a whole section in our ordinances describing the current, not grievance process, but the current disciplinary process against the city administrator. This would add a grievance process for the employees to access that process against the city administrator. And I think that deserves the strength of an ordinance. It's just my opinion. Any other comments?
I do. I think that if you're going to making the city administrator's position directly connected to as a regular employee, and all the terms and the benefits and all the aspects of the personnel regulations are pertaining to the city administrator, that section should be in the city administrator, because in the personnel regulations, because we don't go in the code of ordinances, in this code that we're passing or it's brought before us today, nothing says in there that what his vacation, how he's going to accrue vacation, or how that's all in the personnel handbook. So everything should be in the personnel handbook. We shouldn't just pick and choose and put some stuff in ordinance and some stuff's in the handbook. It should all just be in the handbook. And this ordinance would be making him a regular employee, not a contract employee, which he was in the past. Excuse me.
Well, there's a regular employee, and then there's an employee that's in charge of all the other regular employees. I mean, the ordinance is defined, not only describes the process for disciplinary actions against the city administrator, it describes the city administrator's duties and functions. All of that's in the current ordinance. It makes sense for this to be in an ordinance because the city administrator position controls every other employee in the city, and as such has a little bit extra responsibility and needs a little bit more legal definition. And if we're going to strike all of that, then you're going to have to go in and modify the ordinances as they stand now in addition to this. And this is a perfect kind of topic that we should discuss further in study sessions. Anybody else want to make any comments on Alderman Glick's motion to amend? So if not, let's vote. So a no vote does not amend, a yes vote amends. And that motion fails for lack of majority, 3-3. All right. Further discussion on the item. Any other further comments? Well, if not, let's vote on the ordinance. Motion carries 5-1. Count. All right. That brings us to, let me double check here. That brings us to ordinance number 1692, an ordinance of the city of Tullahoma, Tennessee, to amend ordinance 1651, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025, and ending June 30th, 2026, for passage on the second of 3 readings. Do we have a report from staff on this one?
I'm going to refer to Sue on this one.
Yeah.
This is the annual closeout of the prior year budget. No changes have been made from the last presentation. What you will see in third reading will be Tullahoma City Schools budgets will be brought forward, and any other information that we have not had available yet to close out the FY26, to include anything the board has done and any transfers made by staff.
Any questions for Ms. Wilson? All right. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Any discussion on closing out last year's budget? If not, then let's vote. That motion carries 6-0. Brings us to the fourth item, ordinance number 1693. An ordinance to require equal general fund appropriations for the Tullahoma Sports Council, the South Jackson Civic Center, and the Tullahoma Area Chamber of Commerce for passage on the second of 3 readings. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Glick, would you like to speak?
I think we need to pass this to make all these 3 very important organizations equal.
Okay. Any other comments? So I believe we have some reports from staff on how we might go about doing this, because is that okay, or would you rather wait to the study session?
I'm fine to talk about them now, or we can talk about it in the study session.
Okay.
I think in order for this to pass, that we're going to need a budget amendment to enact it, kind of the enabling part of that since we already do have a balanced budget, the money we would have to work within what's allocated in hotel motel tax, or we would have to fund those separately, part from general fund, which, since we have a balanced budget, would require a budget amendment first. And I'll refer to Sue. Anything she may want to add?
I think the way you would do that is the ordinance passed, then you would make an amended budget.
Right.
Because you would need to wait and see what that the ordinance did pass. You wouldn't want to amend the budget and then the ordinance hadn't passed yet. So you would pass the ordinance first, then amend the budget as to how.
Right. I agree with that. I would like to defer to Brittany for just a little bit on. I think there's a little bit of concern on some budget conflictions, ordinance conflictions with 2 previous ones we have, or we could talk about that in a study session as well.
We can talk about it now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't mind talking about it at any time. As we have discussed, as I've sent you all my research on the hotel motel tax ordinance that we currently have, is we passed that prior to state regulation on this topic. So we are grandfathered in that we had that ordinance in place prior to the state regulating these funds. If we change that ordinance, as I've told you when this was brought up on a different topic, if we change that ordinance, then you run the risk of losing your grandfathered status, which means that we cannot then delegate to all of these different organizations that are listed based on the percentages that we have in the ordinance currently. So because of that, I know that I was not here at the last meeting and when this was passed. And so what I have talked with Sue about and with Jeff about at length is how do we implement this without changing that ordinance? That's, if we're going to implement it, I think that's the best way to do it without changing that ordinance so that we don't lose our grandfathered status under that ordinance. Obviously, the chamber's already getting up to 12% in that ordinance, and then I think South Jackson is getting really up to 9% because they have a 6% general provision, but then 3% for insurance. But in talking to Sue, and I'll let her elaborate on this more, it sounds like we're paying for a whole lot more than that with at least one of these organizations. And so we don't know if we're supposed to, staff doesn't know if they're supposed to account for everything that these organizations are receiving. That's one question that the ordinance doesn't answer. If we're paying, I think it's over $5,000 a year for one of the facilities to have the yard mowed there, do we count that? Is that attributed to the funds that they're receiving from the city? If we're paying for their insurance, do we count that? Those questions need to be answered. I do think it will require a budget amendment to pass this as well. And I think it's not wise to tie the hands of future boards. Every board ought to be able to make the decision with what funds are available at that time. And this kind of toes the line with tying the hands of future boards as well, which is a concern of mine. But I think, Sue, I'll let you talk more about the ordinances that you found that you think also conflict with this as well.
May I speak on?
Yeah, go ahead.
We pass ordinances, rules, laws, and everything that ties the hands of boards all the time. I don't think this is anything different. The rules that are in there now, the ordinance that's in there now, ties the hands of boards. So that's not a valid argument. Number 2, the reason why we would be enacting a separate ordinance that merely says the level of funding that these organizations get is tied to the amount in the hotel motel tax ordinance. So that just points to that number, that amount of money that they receive, so that these other groups would get an equal amount as. It does not change that ordinance, so the reason it was written in the way it was to not affect that ordinance and risk our grandfather status. So, and number two, as far as one of the organizations that we spend money on insurance and mowing the yard and this and that, we do that because it is a city-owned facility. I assume you're talking about South Jackson Civic Center. It is the only one that I know that operates on a city-owned facility. So yes, we are providing insurance to protect our building. It's the city's building. It's not South Jackson Civic Center Group's building. We own it. So of course we want to insure it. And of course we want to mow the yard of our property. So that's why we spend the money on that. So the others, that money doesn't come into the fact as the program and the programming money that they would receive. So the amount of money, the 6% that the South Jackson Civic Center gets is the amount that I'm talking about. The Chamber of Commerce gets 12%. They get 6%. So the way the ordinance would work is you figure out how much the Chamber of Commerce gets out of the 12% makes in a dollar figure that they get, and then that's what the Sports Council gets, and that's what South Jackson Civic Center gets, and you just make up the difference between the 6% they already receive out of general fund money.
Mr. Byrd, Mr. Byrd, sorry. My voice is a little tired after the South Jackson Civic Center show this weekend.
I'd be happy to speak after Sue does. I'm curious to see what she has to say also before I speak.
Ms. Wilson.
What I was going to say is that the current ordinance that's governing our expenditures that we passed on 3 readings is the budget ordinance that set the tax rate and set our final budget for FY27, and that was submitted to the state comptroller as required by law. So that would be what is currently governing and superseding anything else that we have in place. And what the board has to work with in terms of a balanced budget, in terms of funding. So to make any reallocations, you would need to take the current amount in that budget and then make into a subsequent budget amendment, like Mr. Glick said. If you pass this, you would have to take that pool of money and then do a subsequent ordinance. What's the resolution that will amend this budget? Or wait till next spring and look at incorporating that into part of the 6-month process that we spent developing this budget, working with our organizations, and trying to come up with something that funded everybody and funded all our services.
Mr. Byrd.
I just first wanted to start with, I do want to support these 2 organizations, especially South Jackson Civic Center. It holds a special place to me and my family. My wife and I's first date was in that building, and we got married in that building. So I do want that organization to succeed. The part that makes me uncomfortable is the answer of not knowing where the funds will have to come from. I would like some time for staff to be able to prepare a better answer, not just a we'll see in the future. So that's something that is quite concerning to me. So I would like to make a motion to postpone until staff has had time to do more research.
So the motion to postpone, do we have a second? Afraid that fails for lack of a second.
All right.
All right. No, the motion failed for lack of a second. Or, I'm sorry, did you second it, Jerry? No, that's previous motion. That's previous motion. I'm looking at the screen here. I do have a couple comments, though. So when I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the ordinance here, and items 2 and 3 under section 1, and I'm not sure I understand how I would interpret them to apply them. So Section 2 says, in each annual fiscal budget adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the city shall appropriate a base funding amount from the general fund to the Tullahoma Sports Council and the South Jackson Civic Center. Is that amount from the general fund intended to be hotel motel tax, or is there a difference between general fund and hotel motel tax?
That amount proposed would be from the general fund, and it could be hotel motel tax money because the city takes a chunk of hotel motel tax money and puts it into the general fund now.
Ms. Wilson, does that meet your understanding of that language?
It doesn't, it's non-specific as to motel, so I'm assuming any could be either. I would assume it'd be just general fund, but it would
Okay.
be your qualifying expense as a motel tax.
The next one is the parity requirement. 3, parity requirement, the annual general fund appropriation to both Tullahoma Sports Council and the South Jackson Performing Arts Center, I think we got a typo there we need to fix, shall each be exactly equal to 100% of the annual fund appropriation from the hotel motel tax granted to the Tullahoma Area Chamber of Commerce. So if I'm looking at South Jackson Civic Center, we have been funding a lot of items over there beyond the hotel motel tax out of general fund on occasion. Last year, we gave them $30,000. So as I read that and it says they have to be exactly the same, does that mean if South Jackson comes to us with a special need that we won't be able to fund that? Because if we do, we'll have to give money to the other 2 units as well?
That's what it would mean if that amount of money was in that programming line item. If it was to make improvements to the facility, which the city owns, it wouldn't be the same.
So where in here does it say that the appropriation is to their programming line item?
That's what all those are. All those items are that.
It doesn't say that.
It's separated out in South Jackson's appropriations that the city gives. That the city gives, the appropriations that the city gives South Jackson are separated. There's one that says 6%, and then there's money that we give for insurance, and there's money we give to mow the lawn, et cetera.
So you're
But
saying
those are separated.
So you're saying that if we give them 12%, they can't spend that on capital improvements to the facilities?
They would spend it the way they needed to. That would be, at that time, be their money, just as it is the sports councils or the Chamber of Commerce. But you wouldn't conflate the two monies that we give them, monies for the facility and monies for their general fund, I guess you say, instead of program. I'll just say their general fund.
Okay. So they would get money of 12% plus anything we would spend on the building.
That we spend on our building, yes.
Well, but they're spending money to buy, for example, new curtains and new seats and sound equipment and props for plays and money for performance rights for plays. Are we going to expect them to separate those two?
Now, if they spend that money out of their general fund and they spend that money on the facility, well, thanks to them that they are improving the facility that the city owns.
So this gets back to my point that each of these organizations has completely different needs and completely different revenue streams. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to say that absolutely we would fund them exactly. In this case, now we're saying South Jackson is not going to be funded exactly the same. They're going to get this plus some other.
No, they're not getting plus the other. The facility is. That's ours. We're not giving them our building.
If they come and ask us for a capital upgrade in terms of something to make the facility nicer for the patrons, would we be doing that if they weren't holding events there? And if they're asking us for that, it's not for because the building's fallen down, but I mean, they're replacing something nice. They've upgraded bathrooms. They're doing a great job. The facility's beautiful. But how can you say, if you remember the other organization and you saw them get that money, would you feel like that was equal distribution of money?
If they realize that, I would, knowing that the city is owned by the city of Tullahoma and it's not owned by South Jackson.
All right.
And the $30,000 that was spent last year, a lot of that was for the plumbing, correct?
It was.
Or the majority, yeah.
So
If not all of
last
it.
year,
We own.
So we wouldn't pay that every year,
We need
is
to
what
hand
I'm
this
saying.
out during the study session later, but there's a whole list of expenses. And I'm not picking on South Jackson. I'm just trying to point out that it may not be fair to have the exact same dollar value. And I have some concerns about that. So, because what I'm afraid is if we have to fund everybody equally, now we're going to get in this game of, well, if they have an emergency and I give them money if any one of these groups asks for money, I'm not going to be able to give them money without giving the other two money. And now I've just tripled the budget for an item. And what I'm hearing is, well, we'll make an argument that doesn't count because we don't want it to count. I just don't think that's right. But in any
I have
case,
a comment.
I'm sorry.
You go ahead. You can
I don't,
finish your
I don't think
Go ahead,
it's
Ms.
that we don't want it to count. I think it's as the South Jackson is owned by the city, the different upgrades we should be responsible for. And to me, this is just me, I think that is outside of whatever we allocate for them. That shouldn't be included
so
for the upgrade of the building itself. Now,
Okay.
if they want to beautify it, like with the curtains and the new seats, yeah, they can do that. But like plumbing issues, no one would be able to use the bathroom. That's part of the
no,
building.
and I voted for it because of
Yeah.
that very reason.
So we wouldn't spend that much every year.
Hopefully
Or the-
not.
yeah,
But
that was extreme.
we've had a good bit of expense over the last few years with upgrades and things at South Jackson.
It's
So-
it's an older building, and I'm not, playing the devil's advocate or anything, but it is an older building that the city owns, and I think it's our responsibility to pay for the maintenance of the building.
Yeah, we do have an agreement with them right now that says we're not. It's something else we need to consider. So we're responsible for the roof maintenance, but we're not responsible for the building maintenance according to the current agreement we have with South Jackson. I'm not saying I'm in favor of that. I'm just saying that's the facts of the matter. That's where it is. So, all right. Any other comments on this motion?
I have a
Ms.
comment.
Wilson, sorry.
Yeah, I would just like to also speak on, it wouldn't be the same thing, because we do own that building, South Jackson Performing Arts, and it's a building that we own that we would have to maintain. And, South Jackson, they could decide to leave that building, tomorrow, and we wouldn't want to let it just go into disrepair, a building that we own. And I agree with Alderman McGee that, we would need to maintain that building, but if on the other hand, if South Jackson decides that they want to make improvements to it, then, that's actually good for us. But as far as appropriations go, that would not be included. Anything that we would need to maintain our building. The difference is that we don't own the building for these other entities. So
Once again, if that's the way we want it to be, this ordinance should actually reflect that, and it does not. There's no way reading this ordinance to determine what's allowed and what's not allowed right now.
And if we change that, is that what the city attorney was talking about? We would lose our,
Ms. Hoskins, you want to comment?
grandfather.
Well, I'm not so sure that the state would agree that just because you modify it by another ordinance, you haven't modified it. You're running the risk of losing the grandfathered status, I think, by passing this.
Can
but
you,
that's-
can you once again, for everybody's remembrance, explain the grandfather status you're talking about?
Yeah, so now the state regulates exactly what you can do with hotel motel tax revenue. They tell us what we can do. Before they decided to do that at the state level, we passed our ordinance, which says, we're going to give these allocated percentages to specific organizations. What it means when the state says you're grandfathered in is that since you had that in place at the time that we started regulating it, you can still keep doing it like you were already doing it. But if you start changing what you're doing, then the state can say, okay, then that ordinance can no longer be in effect, and we get to regulate it completely now because you're not grandfathered anymore, because you're not still doing what you were already doing. This was previously brought up about maybe lowering some amounts, and we could do that because our ordinance, which is grandfathered in, says not to exceed X percentage. That means we can always go under those amounts. But if you start adding organizations, changing organizations, or changing the percentages higher, then you've changed the ordinance. Whether you do that in this ordinance or by separate ordinance, I don't think is going to be the deciding factor. But if you're comfortable with losing the grandfathered status and being completely regulated by the state, you can do that. But that is the risk that you're running by doing this.
I don't think that risk is great. It's a whole separate ordinance, and it's just pointing to that dollar figure amount. So I think that's not even, I don't think that's worthy of consideration.
So one final question on item 4, budget adjustments. If the Board of Mayor and Aldermen vote to increase or decrease the fund allocation for the Chamber of Commerce during any fiscal year or budget state amendment, appropriations for the Sports Council in South Jackson City Center shall automatically be adjusted to maintain exact financial parity. Does that hold true for changing the budgets of the other 2 organizations?
Yes.
It doesn't say that.
It says all of them have financial parity, so it does say that.
Well, but then why the budget adjustment note?
Because this ordinance is pointing to the amount that the Chamber of Commerce receives as the benchmark for what these other organizations would receive. That's why it calls it out independently.
So I'm just asking because in item number 2, it mentions the annual budget adoption and the annual general fund appropriation, but it doesn't say anything about amendments. And now in amendments, you just say that one of them changes, the other 2 do, but it doesn't say the others do. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't, but it doesn't.
They do I realize that, but they do in order to maintain financial parity, they would all have to change.
That's true, and I'm not trying to be overly difficult. I'm really not. But in item 2, it says, in each annual fiscal budget adopted, they shall appropriate a base funding amount for the parity. The parity requirements in 3. The annual general fund appropriation to all 3 should have to be the same. That's the annual fund appropriation when we pass the budget. So now what happens when I amend the budget? It doesn't say they have to be the same there, and it says for the one to change. I'm just pointing out that that probably needs some language work.
It could.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. Now let's vote. This is just to clarify, we're on the second of 3 readings, right?
Yes.
Okay. Got 6 yes. And we'll talk about it some more in the study session. All right. Lost my place. New business. Okay, new business. Ordinance number 1687, an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee by creating provisions in Title 12 and Title 13 for the designation of city personnel for service of notices and processes for codes violations for passage on the first of 2 readings.
I'm going to have Nick come up and speak a little bit about this. What this is just enables us to be able to enforce some stuff with codes enforcement. And Nick's going to tell us just a little bit about that.
We've touched on this previously a little bit in some previous meetings. Basically, what this does, the city has several ordinances and local adopted codes on how the city cites or assesses fines against property maintenance issues. This kind of clarifies that and streamlines everything and gives the proper authority to the different people who need to issue those citations and fines. And it mainly affects commercial properties, those who are owned by LLCs or by capital groups rather than an individual. So it just makes it easier for us to do our jobs and to cite those properties and assess fines against them.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. Now let's vote.
Is the motion seconded already?
I'm sorry.
Okay, it is now. Yeah.
Motion carries 6-0. Ordinance number 1694, an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee, as set forth in the Tullahoma Municipal Code to rezone parcels located in the Tullahoma city limits at 707 East Lincoln Street from general commercial C2 to high-density residential R3 for passage on the first of 2 readings. Staff report.
Yes, sir. This, for whatever reason, this property was zoned commercial a long time ago. The vast majority of the properties surrounding it are zoned as residential, and that's what the property owner is seeking to have it rezoned back to is residential. It received a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Any comments or questions? If not, let's vote. That motion passes 6-0. Next item, number 8, ordinance number 1695, an ordinance to amend section 1-216 in Title I, Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee, adequate public notice for public meetings for passage on the first of 2 readings. Do we have staff report on this one?
We do. I'm going to refer to Mr. Worsham because he wrote this one.
This is a housekeeping item. Our ordinance requires 7 days notice of public meetings, and the practice has become statewide recognized to be 5 days as adequate public notice. And all this does is to conform our code of ordinances to the practice that is in place now.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or questions on that? Ms. Wilson.
I just really have a procedural question. First, so this agenda item lists Mr. Worsham, our city attorney, as the person bringing it forward. And I'm just curious who requested this ordinance be placed on the agenda, and
I did.
And I'm just curious, I think that anything that makes things less accessible to the citizens is just, in my opinion, not a good idea. There's not a legal requirement that necessitates this change. Reducing it from 7 days to 5 days. Correct? There's not.
Well, we're just reflecting the common practice, Ms. Wilson. Statewide.
So when we're doing things that are just common practice, or maybe other people are doing it, it seems like that we would want to, err on the side of, because we've had the 7 days for a long time. And I think it works, and I'm just curious of why we would want to make it less accessible for people.
Just again to reflect common practice.
Mr. Glick.
I just wanted to make a comment in regards to the discussion we had earlier about agenda items. And I don't have a problem with these agenda items being on there at all, but this item was put on there by the city attorney. The previous 2 items were put on by Nick Kimbrough, department head. There was never any discussion saying that these items should go through a study session and so forth before they're put on the agenda. So I don't think an alderman should be held at a more stringent standard. So that is why we changed the rule that we changed. That is now the current rule. So I just wanted to point that out.
All right. Any more comments on this motion?
I do. There wasn't any one of us here on this board who was the legislative body that requested this. I personally think that it's inappropriate unless it addresses something that has some case law or I just don't understand because there were other cities that are doing it when it actually decreases the accessibility to our public. And I haven't heard any compelling reason for reducing the public notice from 7 to 5 days. Our citizens currently receive 7 days. That gives them more time to learn about a meeting, understand what is being discussed, contact their representatives, and then just rearrange their schedules and participate. If 7 days were preventing the city from conducting necessary business, I would certainly consider changing that. But absent evidence that our current standard is causing a problem, I don't see a public benefit in giving citizens less notice. 5 days may be legally adequate, according to the language, but, 5 days may be common elsewhere, but neither of those things means 7 days is bad policy for Tullahoma. When it comes to transparency, I would rather err on the side of giving our citizens more notice, not less. And for that reason, I support keeping our existing 7-day standard.
So I have just a couple comments. First of all, I want to point out that item number 12 on our new business agenda is for the purchase of a 2026 420 cat backhoe from Thompson Cat Manchester. I don't recall any alderman asking for us to buy a new backhoe, but it's on the agenda because the city needs it. The city administrator is given authority to set the agenda for items like this. The attorneys can make recommendations. The city administrator can decide whether or not to put them on there, and if we want to change that rule, we can. But that's why it's on the agenda. I believe Mr. Dameron's had several discussions with Ms. Horsham about this item. As far as the reason why you would want it to be shorter, that's easy enough. We've had several occasions where that due to lack of quorum or something that we've had a meeting canceled, and then we have to set a new meeting. And if you start making the days too long, you actually start interfering with people's right to due process. For example, especially on the Planning Commission, if we have a Planning Commission item that someone is waiting on us to approve and we delay them an extra week because of an extra couple of days of public notice, it really starts to impact people. So, I agree that I don't want it to be 1 day. And in the case of extreme emergency, we're allowed to make it that short, and we've done that on a couple of occasions. But as a general rule, a little bit shorter time gives us a little more flexibility, especially with rescheduled meetings, while still giving the public plenty of time to find out about an event. So, Mr. Glick.
I just, your comment about the Caterpillar tractor being on there, that just makes my point is, all the staff, attorneys, whatever all of them could add agenda items on there. The aldermen ought to be allowed to, as they are by our rule, and that rule should stay. And that's just a point.
Ms. Wilson.
Because this is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen's meeting. It's no one else's meeting. It's the Board of Mayor and Aldermen's. It's not staff's meeting. It's not the mayor's meeting. It's the Board of Mayor and Aldermen's meeting. So everyone on that board should be able to put an item on the agenda as they are, according to our rules that we adopted in 2023, to have an item on there. So, and about the notice, I think more notice is better than less.
Ms. Wilson.
And I agree to Alderman Glick's point that, and it's also another thing, if there's a need in our city to purchase a new tractor is different, but it's different than just sticking something on here that's not broken. And I also agree that anybody can put anything on this agenda with no study session whatsoever, including our city attorneys, even when it's something that just because other cities are doing. And I think that if anything, that what you're proposing is stifling.
I'm not proposing anything. We're voting on an item.
I'm sorry.
Here.
Can I finish?
You're not to make allegations of motivations according to our rules.
Because anything trying to make it more difficult for aldermen to put something on there when anyone else in the city can put something on here in the same time frame without any study session would be stifling, in basically censoring our ability to conduct business in the city when we are actually set up as a weak mayor system according to our charter. And it's set up that way for a purpose because when being set up so that there's not a concentration of power in just one person, that there's actually we all have equal power under the law, so that we don't end up with a dictator.
Ma'am, respectfully, this agenda item is about public notice, not whether the mayor is a dictator.
You know what? You never silence anyone but me, it seems. And I would like to just be able to speak sometimes without you interrupting. But you
Ma'am,
won't have to worry about that anymore. And you know what? That's okay. You can go ahead. I'll stop talking now since that's the point.
The point is to discuss the item on the
No,
agenda.
you just
So-
want to stifle anything that the aldermen have to say that you don't agree with.
Any other comments on this agenda item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to comment that we publish our agendas on Thursday, and that's 5 days before our meeting the next Monday. So we've been doing this for many, many years.
Thank you, sir. If there's no other discussion, let's vote.
I do have something to say.
I've called the vote.
Okay.
Sorry, motion fails for lack of majority. All right, that's my fault. I voted wrong. We'll catch it again. Item number 9, ordinance number 1696, an ordinance to amend the Tullahoma Municipal Code by adding a new chapter to Title 11 Municipal Code of Ordinances to establish sex-based athletic eligibility criteria for city-sanctioned recreational programs and facilities, to define relevant terms, to establish verifications procedures, to provide for enforcement and liability indemnification, and provide for severability for passage on the first of 2 readings. Do we have a motion and a second? We motion second. Mr. Glick, do you have comments?
Yes, I brought this ordinance forward in order to protect our young women and the women's sports in Tullahoma. This is reflective of state law, who already has provisions to protect sports in colleges and in school sports. Now, this protects women's sports in recreation leagues in Tullahoma and on our facilities. So that's why I brought this forward.
Any other comments? Bobby? Ms. Wilson, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just would like to support ordinance 1696. And for me, this comes down to just fairness, safety, and maintaining the integrity of athletic competition. When the city of Tullahoma offers separate athletic divisions for males and females, I believe those divisions should have clear and consistent eligibility standards based on biological sex. That is particularly important in competitive athletics, where biological differences can affect strength, speed, performance, and, depending on the sport, participant safety. I also believe it is important to recognize what this ordinance does not do. It does not prohibit anyone from participating in city recreation altogether, and it specifically does not apply to co-ed, mixed gender, or open division programs. It establishes eligibility standards for programs that the city has chosen to designate as single sex. We have a responsibility to provide fair opportunities for all of our citizens, and that includes protecting meaningful athletic opportunities for girls and women. I also appreciate that this ordinance establishes a clear standard rather than leaving these decisions to individual coaches, parents, recreation employees, or outside organizations on a case-by-case basis. Clear rules help everyone understand the expectations before a season begins and allow those rules to be applied consistently. I believe we can treat every person who participates in our recreational programs with dignity and respect, while still recognizing this legitimate reasons for maintaining separate male and female athletic divisions. And for those reasons, I will be voting in favor of this.
Any other comments? Mr. Byrd?
Yes, I just had a question. Are we voting on the one that was published or the one that was handed to us before the meeting? Those are slightly different.
I was going to make the amendment. I'm requesting an amendment to the ordinance that was presented in the agenda packet, and I've amended section let me see where it is. Okay, it's in section E, C, section E, subsection C. Okay. Let me get it. Section 1, subsection C. And that is changing it. In the original ordinance, it had in there where the Parks and Recreation Department or the city could conduct random audits of the rosters or birth certificates or whatever to see if everything was right. That this change takes that out of it and makes it a complaint-driven system, to where the only time the city or Parks and Rec would get involved with doing an audit is if there was a complaint based on someone. And then it also adds in there a process that can be appealed, and it sets out guidelines of how much time is given for the appeal process and therefore so those are the changes. It makes it a lot more fair, and I think it does take make it more legally defensible if someone is complaining their rights under the 14th Amendment were violated because of this. Also, I know there were questions about birth certificates. Now, there are no, and it states it right in here, we do not keep any birth certificate. It says to protect the participant privacy, no digital physical copies of birth certificates shall be transmitted, uploaded, or retained by the city.
Any other comments? Mr. Byrd?
Well, just looking at it, you said section 1, subsection C. I'm not seeing any changes.
Section 1, subsection E, subsection C.
So under E is enforcement, violation, and penalties. And then under E, it was what?
C.
C, which is complaint-driven eligibility review.
It's on the third page.
E2C.
Section 1E C. Yeah, 1E 2C. Getting deep.
It's on the third.
Yeah.
It's on the third.
And it goes into the fourth, yep.
And then there's also an addition of 1E4 and 1E5 on the one that you handed out.
Yeah, that gives the appeal process. It's really the whole section C is changed.
I would just like more time to go over this, because it was only a few minutes to be able to read this before the meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If you want this to be legally defensible, I think you need to give us more opportunity to review this again. This is very, very short notice. I don't think it's adequate public notice to do this, as a matter of fact.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have some issues with enforceability of this, although I agree with the idea. This is, we have use of field agreements with individual organizations that use our fields. The board.
Are we in deliberations with the attorneys
I'm sorry,
now?
the attorneys are allowed.
Or did you ask them?
I'm recognizing the attorneys to give their opinion.
Point of order.
What is your point of order?
You have to have a vote to be able to have them recognized. If they want to give information, that's fine, but I don't think they need to deliberate with the board.
This is information.
Excuse me. Section 4, Decorum 4.1. During board meetings, board members shall preserve order and shall obey the rules of the board. Board members shall demonstrate respect and courtesy to one another, to city staff, and to members of the public appearing before the board. Members shall seek to phrase any and all communications, writing, and speech in a professional, constructive manner pursuing official capacity. So first of all, let's give courtesy to staff. And I'm not saying that was completely discourteous. Item 5.4, persons may not engage in discussions with the board during board deliberations unless specifically asked a question by a board member. Persons who have been asked a question by a board member must be recognized by the chair before being allowed to speak. The chair may end any question and answer session between board members and members of the public, facilitate and order business. So we have the right to recognize people besides the members of this board. And further, in order to ensure proper presentation of agenda items by staff, and I'm sorry, that's not the item I'm looking for. 6.3, when questions arise from board members during a meeting of the board, the city administrator shall designate the appropriate staff member to address each agenda item and shall see that each presentation is prepared and presented to inform and educate the board on the issues. As a summary, the staff member making the presentation shall make it clear if no board action is required or present staff recommendations as part of the presentation or present specific options for the board consideration. Our rules explicitly state that staff members are allowed to speak in meetings in response to questions from board members. And so she is allowed to speak, and if you want to prevent that, you will have to have a motion and pass by a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules.
I am fine with her answering questions, or the attorneys or any staff members answering questions. But a lot of times it tips on the edge of entering into deliberations with the board. I just want to make sure that doesn't occur. So.
Okay. Well, we also pay our attorneys to give us their opinion, and so I'm asking for their opinion at this time.
So again, Mayor, as far as my opinion, I'm concerned about enforceability of the ordinance because again, we got this very last minute, and so I haven't had time to do all the research I would like to do on this. State law does regulate this in our state for us already, but there's language in here, for example, that any outside organization that doesn't comply with this, that this shall constitute a material breach of their lease terms. Well, we have individual leases with these organizations. You can't add terms to those individual contracts just by passing an ordinance that says that. So and it says, that if they don't comply, that they can't use our facilities for a year, and he's got all kinds of repercussions in here. We can't enforce that because it's not in our agreements that we have with these organizations right now. It would be wise for the board, if the board decides to do this or wants to do this, for us to change it in our use of our fields agreements with individual organizations. You can't use our fields if you don't comply with what we're saying. But to pass this as an ordinance that we haven't had time to research or review, and we did not write, and it's got language like that in here. There's also a complete appeal procedure that involves our city administrator and a formal hearing. I'm all about due process, but I'm not so sure that our city, that's his duty, to decide certain things like this. So I think that's the purpose of some of it. No, I don't think anybody's saying an alderman should put an item on the agenda, but when we do allow things to go to a study session, we have time to research it. We have time to look into it so that we can give you the best advice when we're here. And we've not had time to do that with this ordinance. The board can probably do this. In fact, in our state, I think we can, but there's probably a much easier way to do this in just changing our policy and the board directing us to change our Parks and Rec policy.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody have any questions for our attorneys?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
So to say that we haven't had time to research, but at the same time, we're asking to give the public and us less notice from 7 to 5 days on agenda items. And by standard, things are put onto the agenda on a Wednesday. That's when the agenda comes out, and we all have the same amount of time to prepare for that. And so we should all come prepared to discuss what's on the agenda in the proper time, which is, and at the same time, again, we're trying to take it from 7 days to 5 days, which we may currently do a lot anyway, but I don't know how that the people can say that they feel like that there's not enough time when it was done in the proper manner. And it's the same agenda that we all have. I'm prepared. I think we should all be prepared.
And I just make one small comment.
Yeah.
Did you not just hand this to us as the meeting started?
It only has that one change that I mentioned. It's the
Okay.
same as it's in the agenda other than that change.
Yes, sir. You had further comment?
And I made that change at the request of the city attorney. She pointed out that there was a problem with that, so I did some research and made that change. This ordinance, it complies with state law. It is basically what the state is using, and it defines sex as it is defined in the Tennessee Code Annotated. So it follows all the state codes. It gives rights to appeal. It gives all the definitions. I think this is very legally defensible. There shouldn't be anything in there that really needs to be changed. If it does, it could be changed on second reading. We've been doing that on a lot of these ordinances as they've gone through. So I would say let's pass this tonight on first reading. There's no need to wait any further. I'm not looking for an easy way out of this. I'm interested in protecting our young ladies that play sports in Tullahoma and the sanctity of women's sports. This doesn't preclude anybody from playing any sports because there are mixed divisions and co-ed sports that are protected. And anybody that uses our facilities should conform with our rules and regulations and laws. So that goes without saying, these outside organizations using our facilities anyway. So I think we pass the ordinance, then you could change any users agreements with leagues if needed to note our new law that we passed. And I will be voting yes to protect our young ladies.
Any other comments? If not, let's vote. Motion carries 6-0. Resolution number 2050, a resolution requiring all informal study sessions of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee to be recorded, televised, and made available for public viewing, and repealing resolution number 1975. That's on page 16.
One question, was that a vote on the amendment to that last ordinance?
Oh, you're right, it was. That was a vote on the amendment. We got to vote on the other, don't we? I apologize. We were on it so long, I forgot where we were.
Yeah, good catch.
It should have been a vote on the amendment. So now we need to vote on the main motion. So let's go ahead and vote unless anybody has any. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Now we're voting on the resolution for ordinance number 1690, not a resolution, ordinance number 1696 on the first of two readings as amended. That motion carries 6-0. And that brings us to, again, resolution 2050, resolution requiring informal study sessions of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee to be recorded, televised, and made available for public viewing, and repealing resolution number 1975. All right. So we have a motion second. Mr. Glick? Motion?
I brought this forward because in the interest of transparency, that I think the study sessions should be recorded and broadcast just as regular board meetings are. I think the public should easily be able to see what is discussed by the board members when we're all here in those study sessions. And also, I made note that we're not really following the ordinance as far as study sessions. I've got all these papers up here. I lost my section, but the Code of Ordinance says study sessions are supposed to be after regular board meetings, not before or not any other time, unless it's changed by a resolution. So I just make a note there. Let's follow that rule.
So which rule was that?
It's in the ordinances.
Which ordinance?
It's in the City Code of Ordinances.
All right.
Here it is. City Code 1-206, Section 3, Board Study Sessions and/or work sessions. Work sessions are hereby established by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen shall meet on the second and fourth Mondays of each month immediately after the regular meetings of the Board, effective March 1st, 1992, and shall continue thereafter until changed to or such other times as the Board by resolution.
Okay.
So that's just pointing that out. No big deal, but we haven't followed that recently, so we should. But the main crux of Resolution 2050 is to make these study sessions just all they have to do is continue recording, televising the board meeting. So it's not hard to do, but it is a lot better for transparency with the public to be able to see how decisions are made and what deliberations the board goes through. So I think for transparency's sake, that should be televised as well.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes, I'm always for more transparent government. We actually had discussed this at one time in a previous board. Transparency should always be one of the fundamental principles of local government. When this board meets to discuss public policy, proposed ordinances and resolutions, things like expenditures, just any matter that affects our community, the citizens should have the opportunity to hear those discussions. It's hard enough for people with work schedules and children and things that they have to do to even attend our regular board meetings, which is why that we televise those. So, not everyone and very few people can attend study sessions in person. We should not prevent those citizens from being able to see and hear how the elected officials are discussing the issues that will directly affect them. In fact, study sessions can contain some of the most important and substantive conversations that we have. This is a lot of times where, questions are asked, information is presented by staff and by one another. And I think that the citizens have a right to be able to know what goes in to making decisions that directly affect them, since oftentimes in our meetings, many times, aldermen don't express even why that they're in support of something when they vote on it. So, I'm for more transparency always, and not less.
Any other comments on this item?
Yes. I think I had brought this up as a discussion point October or November of 2024. We did have a discussion in a public meeting about that. At the time, the city administrator had said there was an additional cost. I was wondering if staff has had time to look into that additional
I actually
cost.
had spoke with Chris Barstad from TUA. It's currently outlined in our current contract. I think it's $65 or $75 an hour. If you figure we've done, because we do a lot of study sessions, during budget season, I think roughly the fiscal impact would probably be around $3,000 a year total.
Any other comments? Let's vote. That motion carries 6-0. And a resolution number 2051, a resolution for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee, directing city staff to expedite preliminary design and identify funding options for a new playground and splash pad at the CD Stamps Community Center. So we have a motion and second. We have a motion from Ms. McGee and second from Ms. Wilson. Discussion, Ms. McGee.
Yeah, I would like to amend this. By postponing this discussion when JP returns. I think the splash pad is a great idea. But when we were meeting, they were talking about the 5-year plan for CD Stamps. And in that 5-year plan, it included building an additional gym, an industrial kitchen, and an inside walking track. I love the idea of a splash pad. I love that idea. I think it would work best at the park to include that in the play area with the kids. So I don't know if I worded that right as an amendment.
If you're wanting to table it, the motion would be to table it.
Table it, okay.
Or postpone to a future date. You can set the date. We could set it to the very next meeting. Would JP be back?
He will be.
He should be. Mhm.
Okay, so you could make a motion to postpone until the next meeting.
And I think that Kurt and, Alderman Glick and myself, we could still work together with Parks and Recreation.
So is that a motion?
That is a motion, I'm
To
sorry.
postpone until next meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Alderman Byrd. I'd just like to say I really appreciate the Parks and Rec guys working on all these plans, and it's really interesting to me as I talk to, I'll have a question like this, and I'll call a staff member, and they're like, oh, we got a 5-year plan, we got a 10-year plan, we got a 15, and they'll start telling me where it fits on the plan, or do they need to add it, and so we keep good plans there, and I think it'd be good if we can stay coordinated with the staff on that. So any other comments on the motion to postpone?
That was going to be my same comment, is that this would be a little bit of an interruption to Parks and Recreation's long-term plan. I do love the idea of it. I'd just like to see where that would fit into their plan.
I don't think it's the long-term plan is to have a playground and splash pad out there. When we built CD Stamps, and that's why I brought this forward now as I close out my 41 years with the city, is when we built CD Stamps in the late 90s, and I think we opened it in 2000, the plans were at that time to add a playground and splash pad out there. That was 26 years ago. We've promised that community 26 years ago that they would be doing that. They might have a new 5-year plan now, but that's a 26-year plan that we had in place to do that. So I think, so I won't be voting for postponing this item. I'm going to vote no on the postponement. I will vote yes when we talk about that on continuing with the planning process of this. I think it's something that is needed not only for that community, for the city, and it is something that is going to not only be very usable to the citizens, a great place for families to gather, and it gets kids off of computers and devices and gets them out with their families where they could interact and socialize with other people. It also provides a much needed enhancement to the way that facility looks. Has anyone driven like from Winchester toward Tullahoma and looked over there to the left and seen that back end of CD Stamps in the front yard over there? If we could put a little more curb appeal on our town on this major entrance to Tullahoma by adding a very attractive playground and splash pad right there. So the benefits are multiple, but twofold as far as that goes. But so I guess we have to vote on the amendment.
Or the motion to postpone. I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, I agree with what Alderman McGee as well as Alderman Glick have discussed, and I do think that it would be a very valuable asset over there, like what Alderman Glick mentioned, as it's kind of like visible as you're entering our town. And also just want to remind everybody that what we're actually voting on is not to pass it so that it's beginning to happen, or it's not committing us to some sort of large expenditure, that it's actually just directing staff to evaluate the site infrastructure, just the potential costs of it. And I think it's a great idea. A splash pad is completely different than anything that we have right now. I mean, we have a pool and things like that, but a splash pad is just, it's geared toward smaller children, like there's not as much like time commitment as taking, children to the pool. I think it's, it's really nice for bringing families outdoors and things like that. So they're really pretty too, even when the weather's colder. And it's just a nicer open space then. So I'm in favor of directing staff to look at this. I think that they could work together with any other plan that anyone else has.
Ms. McGee.
I think the aesthetics of adding the additional gym, I think that'll be appealing to people coming in from the Winchester side. And it's been a long time since the community. I'm part of that community. It has been a long time. I think Steve Cope was the mayor when CD Stamps, and he did promise the community that the playground would go back there. But since then, there is this concern that that CD Stamps will eventually become a police station. That's always been the concern. Although we've built a new police station, that's always on the back of everyone's mind. A lot of people that I talk to, well, are they going to do this with CD Stamps? So I think with building, investing and in building an additional gym, an industrial kitchen, an inside walking track will build the trust and the confidence of everyone in the community that I grew up in, the community that I still live in, that they are investing in CD Stamps. Again, I'm not against the splash pad at all. It's just the discussion was it would be a better fit at the park, since with the picture of how the new park is proposed to look, and then everybody is in one area instead of maybe leaving the splash pad at CD Stamps and going over to the park, or you could have family functions and everyone be in the same place, or those types of things. So I'm not against the splash pad at all. That's just, the plan that we had discussed.
Mr. Clegg.
Well, you're referencing new plans and new promises. 5 years or however, I don't know. I haven't
That's
heard
true.
the new promise of a new gym, but those are new promises. A promise that was given 26 years ago was that there would be a playground and splash pad out there.
I get that.
So let's fulfill our promises that we've been given before we chase another promise that might be another 26, 50 years down the road. I don't know, but I like the idea of a new gym, and I don't think this playground and splash pad precludes the addition of a new gymnasium whatsoever.
An additional, not a brand new one.
An additional gym. There have to be, it's going to have to be studied and probably additional land, regardless there if you do that. But it can, all the design for a new splash pad and playground, like I'm asking to be done in this resolution, can be done with the idea that we will be adding on an extra gymnasium there. So, one doesn't have to preclude another, but let's fulfill our 26-year-old promises first before we go down the path of expecting promises that, may or may not come.
Mr. Byrd.
Talking about the motion to postpone in particular, I believe the original motion was for JP to be able to speak to us about this. It's not a removing of this permanently. This is a delay of one meeting, and that's something that I value JP's opinion in this, and I would like to hear that.
I value JP's opinion as well. This is only a resolution to seek a design, playground companies and this and that. If you show them the area that you want to build a playground and splash pad, they'll come in and do a design for nothing. So that's not going to cost you, and they'll give you a cost estimate. And then staff could research the funding options. Those are the three components of the resolution. So I think all this stuff could be moving at one time. Staff has 90 days in which to do that. I won't be on the board then. But they could bring that to you and have more information when JSP speaks to you. He would have more information to give you than he currently would now, because it would have all that. And like I said, that is not taking up a great amount of staff time or whatever. These companies will come down and they'll be glad to come down and do it for nothing, and to get some kind of preliminary design. And so I think that, and again, this isn't locking us in.
Right.
This isn't locking us into the project and we vote yes on this resolution and, oh, we have to do this. Unfortunately, we won't have to do it, but I wish we would do it. Yeah. But this would just simply give us another option and be able to see. And then JP would be able to come in here and speak to you guys and give you a lot more information than he would be able to give you next week or at any time.
All right. Unless there's any further arguments, let's go ahead and vote on this motion to postpone. All right, that motion fails for lack of majority, so we're back to the original motion. Is there any other comments before we want to vote on the resolution? All right, let's vote. Motion carries 5-1. And I voted no because I wanted to give our staff members time to come and talk to us before we voted on it.
I have 90 days.
So, all right, that resolution carries. Let's see, where are we at? On to item 2688, a request from the Public Works Department to approve the purchase of a 2020-60 420 Cat backhoe from Thompson Cat Manchester for the state contract price of $134,832 using ARPA grant funds. Staff comment?
Eric's going to speak on this, but I just want to point out real quick, this has no fiscal impact. This is ARPA funds that have specifically been earmarked for stormwater and public works. There is no fiscal impact. This is grant money to purchase actually the next three items, but I'll have Eric speak about exactly what we'll be using this for.
Okay.
Yes, thanks to the city administrator and finance, we would like to move forward with this. This backhoe is replacing a 2000 backhoe that we had in our existing fleet that has hydraulic issues and ready to be put on gov deals. So this is would be used on our stormwater fleet for stormwater projects, obviously, replacing pipes and many things to help road work. And like city administrator said, there's zero budget funds there. It's grant funding.
Yep. Any comments or questions? We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, let's vote. That motion carries 6-0. The next item is also from Public Works, a request from Public Works Department to approve the purchase of a forklift from Bailey Equipment and Intralogistics for the Sourcewell contract price, $33,500 for using the ARPA grant funds. Same thing deal, I guess.
Yeah, yes, sir. This is. And another reason, we're trying to we're under a time frame to purchase this equipment and to have it in place with an invoice by December 31st. So we just want to make sure. I know some things we can purchase, now quick, but some vendors are backed up.
Thank you. Any discussion on this one? All right, let's vote. Motion carries 6-0. Item number 2690, a request from Public Works Department to approve the purchase of a 2026 F-250 4x4 pickup truck from Port of Murfreesboro for the state contract price of $65,270 using ARPA grant funds.
Yeah. And this will be replacing the existing vehicle too, and this is state contract pricing also.
Okay.
And 100% grant funding.
Any discussion on this one? All right, let's vote. That motion carries 6-0. And then that brings us to the last item under our regular or new business, item number 26-91, a request from the IT manager to approve the funding not to exceed $33,000 to renew our Office Productivity Suite license. Staff report.
All right, so this is for our email platform, document, Excel, spreadsheet type of applications. 3 years ago, we were paying over $34,000. Went through a process 2 years ago to realign our licenses with all the departments. So we're still targeting less than $1,000 less than what we were paying 3 years ago for this software.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Well, let's vote. That's 6 yes. And with that, that adjourns our regular meeting. Let's jump into our beer board meeting. We call the meeting to order. Are there any public comments for the beer board? Assume not. Item number 26-BB28, approve the minutes of the July 27th, 26 regular meeting. So we have a motion and a second to approve. We do. Let's vote on that. That motion carries 6-0. So that adjourns us. If let's take a 10-minute break before we start our study session.